Welcome to Conversation Mill. Join me as I talk to individuals stepping out to pursue their passions, from small business owners to community leaders, and learn with me how we can work together to support our local communities and local economies. Visit conversationmill.com to learn more, but now please join us in conversation. Today on the podcast, I am talking with Sherry Joseph. This conversation was such a joy, and I think it will motivate you, like it did me, to pursue a passion or two you might have put on the shelf. I sat down with Sherry inside her Jade Healing Massage offices, located on Mill Street in Plymouth, Wisconsin, very close to where I grew up. Sherry and her husband, Tim, own the building we are in, and Sherry guided me through a series of hallways and staff rooms that connect to their dental practice, Joseph and Joseph Dental. Sherry holds a doctorate in general dentistry, is a licensed massage therapist, a mother of 5, a marathon runner, and recently took up pottery, creating her own pottery studio out of her home. And I haven't even highlighted everything that makes this woman a real-life superhero. This is just the first of what is hopefully many conversations with Dr. Sherry Joseph. So I want to start by asking, dentistry and massage seem like two different worlds.
Yeah.
I think to most people. How did you bring those two things together, and what got you from dentistry into massage?
Yeah. So I wanted to be a dentist since I was like 6 or 7 years old, and kept on it the whole time. And ended up going to dental school. My brother also went to dental school, so suddenly we became this dental family. I married a dentist. He married a dental hygienist. He's got a daughter in dental school and a dental hygienist, and my son's going to dental school. So all of a sudden we're rolling into this whole dental field. My dad was a surgeon. He's retired now. He was a general surgeon. And at one point he kind of started delving into acupuncture, and which is kind of different for a Western medicine to kind of delve into Eastern, but he was kind of interested in that. And I really thought it was very cool. So I kind of started looking into it, and I thought, maybe I'll do acupuncture. That seems like a kind of a cool thing to get into. And the nearest school here is in Racine, which is, an hour and a half, almost 2 hours away, and 5 kids, that just wasn't going to fly.
Yeah.
So I started kind of looking around to see if maybe acupressure might be something to look into. And there was a school that I found there's no acupressure, like licensure for acupressure, but it's under the heading of massage therapy. And so I found a place that practiced Chinese medicine acupressure under the heading of massage therapy in Madison, which is still almost 2 hours away. And I said, that's not going to work. And then that fall, I found out that they were opening a campus in Milwaukee.
Oh, perfect.
The same school. And so then I checked it out and talked to the families just to see if this was a go. And they said, go for it. So I started going to school. And
not to interrupt you, but when you decided to go to school for that, were you still practicing dentistry, or
yes.
did you do that part-time, or you were still doing it full-time? And
I have been part-time dentistry since we started having a lot of kids.
Sure.
So,
that makes sense.
I was 4 days a week, then 3 days a week, then 2 days a week. Then we started homeschooling. That was a day and a half a week. And then I never took that day, a half day back. And then started this and went to a day a week after I started doing like the massage therapy stuff. But yeah, started going to school there and became the first graduate of that campus for massage therapy. But the funny thing is I never really understood why I had this, pull to doing this. There were some weird things that happened. Like I was up north with my family and at my in-laws, and I was just on my phone one night, and I thought, what is like the Bible of acupuncture? Like, what's the book?
Yeah.
So I went on Amazon and looked, and there's this huge thick book that was like the Bible of acupuncture. And I was like, oh, I wonder if my dad has that. I'll have to check that out, And shut my phone off, went to bed. In the morning, I woke up and it said, "Thank you for your purchase." And apparently somehow I bought the book, and it was like, I don't know, like $100 or something. And I thought, well, my husband was like, "Well, just send it back, when it comes." And I'm like, all right. Well, it came, and I couldn't help it. I opened it up, and I looked at it. Half of it was in Chinese, and I was like, but I was just fascinated. I'm like, can I just keep this book? Because it's just pretty awesome. So I kept it. And that was like kind of the first weird thing. And then the second thing was, those career cruising things that the kids do in school where they kind of answer some questions and it says, "Hey, you should be this," or consider being that.
Yeah, this might be a good fit for you. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I was in the library with my son during some counseling thing, and they were going through this stuff, how they came to the questions and all this kind of stuff. And then we went over the things that, our kids were recommended.
Yeah.
And then the counselor was like, "Hey, parents, if you want to quick do this test, you can see, what it says." And so I just answered the questions. And the first thing that came up was acupuncturist.
That's a little wild.
Kind of weird. So when all this kind of came up, I was like, okay, this is maybe universe is telling me, do this, go this route. So I did it. And while I was in school for massage therapy, I was working on my kids. I was practicing on my kids. They were my oldest ones were in high school at the time. And I noticed my son had some lymph nodes that were kind of inflamed in the back of his neck. And I kind of asked him about it. And he was like, "Oh, I don't know. He doesn't feel sick." And he was fine. And so as the months went on, I was still practicing. And I said, "It's still there. Maybe we should get it checked out." So we went to the ENT. Long story short, he ended up having like a head full of polyps, had to have surgery. It was way worse than they thought.
Wow.
Would have been very debilitating had we not caught it and done something in time. And I mean, you just don't go around feeling your kids' necks, So I feel like it was sort of like something telling me, you need to do this because your son's going to need help. And, so then after his surgery was supposed to be like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It was like an hour and a half, and we were still in the waiting room. I was getting kind of worried, and then the surgeon came in and told us, everything, and he was like, it was a little crazy. And so my husband and I were waiting for him to come out, and I was like, well, this is why I was pushed to do this. And I said, "So can I be done? Like,
yeah,
is this it?"
If this was the one thing that was accomplished by learning this, mission accomplished. Like,
I really honestly think that was really what the push was for it. But my husband's like, "No, I think you have more people to help." And over the last 8 years, it has been all that. So it's been really great.
Did you feel a calling as a young child or a teenager to help people? Because dentistry is helping people as well. And I want to get to this later and ask some questions about it, because going to the dentist is something most people are scared of, which we'll dig into later. But it's also something that helps people so much because it's an image thing. If your teeth are unattractive by today's standards, whatever that means, or you're missing teeth or whatever, that's such a blow to your self-esteem. So when people's teeth are healthy, it can change their life. Yeah. So both things you're doing are really beneficial. And we'll get into some of the sleep dentistry you're doing too. But did you feel that calling? Was that a part? Clearly it's a part of why you did your massage, but.
Yeah. The first notion that I had that I wanted to go into dentistry was because I chipped a tooth when I was like 6 years old at school. And my mom brought me to this pediatric dentist who wasn't my normal dentist. I loved our normal dentist. He was very, very kind, so nice. But I went to this other dentist. I didn't have a lot of work to do, as a kid. I didn't have a lot of cavities and things, but I had chipped a front tooth. And this dentist used, this light and all these tools. And I just thought, the toys are so fun in here.
Yeah.
So I walked out of there and I told my mom, "I'm going to be a dentist." And she was like, "Yeah, all right." Yeah. But that was like the first thing. And I just kind of stuck with it. And And dentistry just seemed like I did delve into maybe going to medical school when I was in college, but then I ended up staying with dental, mostly because my dad, him being a surgeon,
Sure.
had to be away from the house so much. And he just didn't, I think he just didn't really want that for me as a woman, as a mom, to always be pulled away from the house. So he's like, I think dentistry is a great thing, especially for, a mom, you can do that part-time and still be in the thick of it. And so I ended up sticking with that. Also, I have to give credit to our regular dentist because he was always so kind, so nice. And I remember we were on our way to a dental appointment, my sisters and my brother, and she had told us that Dr. Otto's wife had died. And I felt so sad. And I honestly, just being a little kid, I thought I'd walk in there and he'd be super sad and it would just be really a solemn experience. But no, he was like all nice and fun and, laughing. And I thought, wow, what a great guy.
Yeah.
And so my experience overall was always very good going to the dentist. And I guess with my dad, my mom was also in the medical field. I don't know. I guess maybe I just kind of was drawn to that. And I don't know. Teeth are cool.
Yeah. And how did your parents balance? Now, how many siblings do you have?
I have 2 sisters and a brother.
Okay. Yeah. So they were both in the medical field. Your dad was a surgeon. What was your mom doing then? How did they balance that? Because that can be a lot with 4 kids and careers.
So my mom, she worked as a pharmacy / med tech. And they came from the Philippines for my dad's surgical residency. My brother and my sister were both born in the Philippines. And then when we came here, then I was born and then my sister. So my mom did work for a while, but after a while, she, had 3 young ones. My sister and my brother and I are within 2 years of each other, all 3 of us.
Oh, wow.
So we're very bing, bing, bing.
Yeah.
And so my mom ended up staying home, but my dad continued, working, and he was gone a lot. Because he was working at 2 or 3 hospitals and a clinic. And so he was really working very hard when we lived in Davenport, which was, kind of a bigger city.
Yeah.
When I got to 7th grade, we moved to a smaller town, Maquoketa, which is much like Plymouth. And it was a really good move for him, I think, because he wasn't kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
At so many different places. So it was a good move, I think, for everyone, our family, and for him career-wise.
Yeah.
But my mom never went back to work as far as in the medical field, but she did do like paperwork and billing and all that kind of stuff for my dad. So
them having come here from the Philippines and then coming into the Midwest like that as an immigrant, what was that experience for them coming to the Midwest? Because I would love to say, having grown up here, that there's not as much racism as there maybe is in the South. But I've also seen a lot of it here in the Midwest, especially in places like Iowa. Some people don't see other ethnicities until they leave their communities.
Right. My mom and dad were pretty blessed in that there was a pretty strong Filipino community in Des Moines where they first started. And then they moved to Davenport, and there was even, I would say, even for me, it seemed like even a stronger community.
So there was a lot of immigration happening to those areas.
Yeah. I mean, it's good
prior years
to get here from the Philippines. You're going to get the doctors, I mean, you're going to get people that are in like professions. They need to have a reason to have been here. And usually it's going to be in some kind of profession like that. So there gets to be kind of, a society that is like the Filipino society or whatever. And we grew up with a strong society in Davenport, Iowa. We did these, it was so awesome. We did these folk festivals that the Quad Cities would put on, and it would be all the different nationalities that were represented, and they would have fashion shows, and it was just over a weekend,
Yeah.
but it'd be fashion shows and dances and food. And then it was in a school, and each room had like a cultural center where you could see,
That's great.
read and learn about each culture. And so we'd always have like a dodgeball tournament with Greeks versus the Filipino kids, and it was just like
That's great.
super fun. But I mean, I'm sure my parents, and they don't talk about it too much, but I'm sure they ran into some racism things. I feel it sometimes, but I feel like, I don't know, in Plymouth, we're pretty well accepted.
Yes.
I mean, they know that, we're professionals, and my kids are good students and good kids. And so I don't feel like that they've really run into that so much, but I will say, I mean, there's not a lot, that a lot of kids that are running around that have black hair, or, I mean, it's just
Sure.
not common. But I think that we've adapted pretty well, and Plymouth has been so accepting and welcoming, very welcoming since the moment we got here. I mean, just professionally as dentists and as our family, always been welcome. And it's just really it's the reason why we came here.
No, it's so positive to hear that Plymouth is so accepting. I've always felt that, but again, I'm not coming from a, ethnic minority in a mostly all white Dutch and German community. Right. So it's easy for me to perceive that, but I'm not experiencing any of it if it's there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm married to a Caucasian. My kids are half, Caucasian, half Filipino, although they look more Filipino than they do, like a German or Norwegian. But they've never really voiced to me anything that was, that they experienced racially. Nothing that really, really stuck out. I do remember when I was growing up, one of my classmates, I don't know why, he would always like say chink to me. I don't know why. And I'm like, first of all, I'm not Chinese.
Yeah.
but I just do remember that and thinking, he just doesn't know.
Yeah.
Let
me roll out a map real quick and teach you the difference between.
First of all, it's not really a PC word to use, but,
right.
But, I think just like you said, like people just don't experience, they don't have any experience with it. And, my dad was always very well respected just in the position that he was in. And, my parents both speak with pretty strong accents, and I know that sometimes when I was growing up, my friends would kind of like have to listen extra close, when they were talking to them, because like they really not be able to understand what they were saying. But, for the most part, we had our American friends, we had our Filipino friends, and it just all, everything all just worked out well. So
it's a big thing to go into business. Even if you are a professional dentist or doctor, like we mentioned earlier, you may not have gone through the business courses to, how do I set up this business? Is it an LLC? Is it an S Corp? How am I getting taxed? What can I write off? Who do I trust to be a lawyer, be an accountant? So what drove you guys to go, hey, let's buy a practice and let's do this on our own versus let's go work for somebody else that might provide stable benefits, less liability, things like that?
Yeah. So we always thought that we would have our own practice. Just being two of us already, we're sort of our own little group.
Yeah.
And we would have the flexibility to come and go as we wanted. And we knew of, friends that had graduated already and things that were already starting their practices, because he hadn't graduated yet, but I had already graduated and had friends that were in practice already for a couple of years, and kind of just saw how that was working for them. And having worked, in the Air Force, it's different when you're not your own boss, I mean, it's just different. So, having our own practice was something that was more of a goal for us. How to do it was a little bit of a stumbling block. We looked at buying a practice in a bigger city in Wisconsin. And we were there and we were raring to go, but the guy that we were wanting to buy the business from thought he was ready to be done, but I think he wasn't quite ready. I think he was just really preparing for his retirement, but didn't think it would happen so fast. And so he was kind of like jumping the gun a little bit. So we were having a hard time making it our own. So we kind of looked around and we found Plymouth and said, this is awesome. And this gentleman was ready to retire very, very soon. So we ended up buying his practice, and it was small, but we knew it was something that we could grow together. And yeah, it just had worked out very well. And Plymouth knowing that we were going to be raising a family. At the time, we had one son and was pregnant with another. And we said, we need to have a place that's very family friendly and place to grow up. So.
And buying a practice versus starting one from the ground up was beneficial. And I want to bring this up for people who might listen from the perspective of being an entrepreneur or a professional that wants to go out on their own. Was you have some built-in clientele to start, so you're going right into business versus let's find a building, all the equipment. I mean, I'm sure in dentistry, the equipment is your most expensive buy-in besides real estate if you're buying a building or something.
Right. So in buying the practice, you have, buying the patient records is a huge part of it. Part of the goodwill is also part of it, the transition, that this dentist
under new management or under new ownership
and presents you as like, I trust them, stay with them, kind of thing. And then the equipment. So the practice that we bought was kind of an older practice. We pretty much revamped the whole thing once we came in. We were in the practice, the physical practice itself, where Dr. Dombeck had practiced for just a short while, not even a year. And then we moved to another area, and that we built up from scratch. At the time, we were just renting the building. Again, we did not know, like, business wise, what, do we buy a place? Do we rent a place? We're already, in quite a bit of debt, just buying a practice. Do we put ourselves in more debt by buying a building or whatever? And then building up this practice that was more debt, it was just like, if people say that, like, oh, you're just so rich because you are a dentist or whatever, it's like, no, we have notes all over this.
Yeah,
this
you
county.
put a lot on the line to make that happen.
It's quite, it was stressful. I remember my husband, when he was signing at the bank the note for the practice, he was shaking so bad because it was like, I've never like signed for this much money in my life. Like, this is like a huge commitment. This is it.
Especially with starting a family and having young kids and wanting to provide. I can't imagine.
It was kind of crazy. So we had rented this building for quite some time. This building that we're in now had been sort of on the market for a long time. Nobody really was interested in it. Then I think it was bank owned, and finally we just said, let's do it. And we gutted half of the building and made this all new. So it was a huge undertaking, but in retrospect, I kind of wish we would have did it earlier. But it's all good, it's all part of that business part that we didn't know about. We kind of talked about this that earlier, is that in dentistry, we just really don't get a lot of business background or information on how to run a business. Dental school teaches you how to prep a crown and fill a filling and clean teeth and all that kind of stuff. But as far as like, this is how a business is run, that you kind of do on the job, or you need to take some other classes or learn from somebody that is already in the thick of it.
What do you think has been the biggest challenge when it comes to the dental practice that you guys came across, whether it was in the first coming in and taking over an existing practice, or was it, when you came into this new space or hiring staff? Like, what's been some of the, if there's one biggest challenge, or what are some of the biggest challenges that you were like, ooh, I wish I would have learned how to deal with this prior?
I think in general, I would say I wish that as far as a financial planner and business manager, we would have gotten somebody that really knew dental business. We had accountants that kind of held our hands through kind of the legalities of everything. But as far as practice management, they weren't dedicated to dental. So they didn't know a lot of the ins and outs of, this is the flow. This is, how things have worked with other of our clients and things like that. So we only just, recently switched over to a financial planner that is really dedicated for dental. And they have switched off everything. Like you said, we switched from LLC to an S Corp. We, it was just like ways that maximize our business.
Yeah.
So, that I wish we would have done a lot sooner. And that
Certainly.
I think is an ego thing, because I just, we just kind of thought we could do this. Like, we're fine. We're doing good. It's fine. We're, paying the bills, and, it's okay, but then as we're getting older and we're thinking, we have to think about retirement here, and we have to think about eventually selling this practice, and figuring out, how is this all gonna like culminate?
Yeah.
And so that's when we really started thinking it's time to put down, in writing, this is what our assets are. This is what we need to do. This is what our goals are. We kind of were going in a sense, paycheck to paycheck,
Right.
just kind of like, hey, we paid our bills. Awesome. Made a little money. Awesome. And so it was kind of going along, but it can be much more lucrative than that. And not that, you want to make millions of dollars or anything, but you want to be able to retire comfortably. And, after working so hard and doing so much for so many years, you want to have a little something to show for it when you get done. So,
exactly. And it seems like you guys are at a good spot to go, okay, like we need to make sure we're preparing for that future. And what you said is so important, of putting those goals in writing, because then you can set those benchmarks of whether that's 2 years, 5 years, 18 months, short-term, long-term. And then once you guys are on board, your partner's on board, your staff's on board, and everybody knows, and it's transparent, it does become more lucrative, because everybody's working towards the same end, essentially.
Yeah. It was kind of like, well, talking about stumbling blocks is COVID.
Sure.
We were closed for at least 10 weeks.
That had to be scary, like right at the beginning, of just not knowing one, what it was, but then when will our business be able to operate?
And when our business does start operating, what's it going to look like?
Yeah.
Because there were so many changes that were happening. I mean, if you think about COVID, we are literally at the mouth of the virus. We're right there.
I just said that to someone who was in dentals. They were talking about being in dental school, and I'm like, man, I just realized how scary that had to be. I mean, of course, our frontline workers, nurses, but so are dentists, so are dental hygienists, who are literally putting their hands where we transmit the virus.
I mean, our face is like, 10 inches from your mouth. It's like, okay,
wow.
There's definitely going to be some precautions, but it was fine. Patients were awesome with it. But I have to say the greatest thing was our staff. Even while we were in our 10 weeks of, downtime, couldn't work, doing anything, they were doing continuing education. They were doing, helping plan for when we reopen, this is what we're going to do, and then once we were given the go ahead to, start getting ready to reopen, it was all the changes that had to happen, air purifiers, barriers, all this kind of stuff, the whole temperature taking and blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. They were so amazing. And you can tell our staff is like an old staff. We have people that have been with us for 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 some years. Our front office manager has been with us since before we were even here, because she was with Dr. Dombeck. And so she's 30 some years, 35 years or something that she's been with the practice itself.
Wow. And it says a lot about you guys as employers too, because not to keep someone from an old practice, but then to maintain that longevity with them and your new staff. So congratulations.
Thank you. The retention is awesome. A lot of it is just because they are family and they have a say in how the practice is run. We are not tyrants. We don't say, iron fist, this is what we're doing. We actually say, what do you think about this? Are you guys comfortable with this? Or, what, any ideas? And they are all, it's very open door policy, and everyone can say whatever they want. And it's just been such a good marriage, I guess, with our little family here. And during COVID, it was just very obvious that they have invested themselves in our practice. And it is their practice too, and everyone stayed. We retained every single employee, and it was just,
wow.
It's awesome. It was just really a blessing. So, that's one thing that, I guess you can teach it, but you really have to be that kind of person. You hear about a lot of places that
certainly
work that it just doesn't work, and those are kind of places that have a lot of turnover and things like that. And I think that may be more of a personality thing. I mean, there's a business aspect to it too, but it's you're really dealing with the person.
Yeah, you finding the people that have the same mindset or outlook on life. Even you're right. You can teach them the skill or, the set of skills to do the job. But if the attitude isn't there to come in with a smile, it just isn't probably never going to be there.
I think you're right. We're a happy staff. And it's funny because my son that was looking at going to medical school, he came and was working at our office and was like, everyone's laughing and everyone's happy, and this is just such a happy place to be, and come every day. He said, this is what I want for my future. So he ended up wanting to go to dental school. So,
I love that. Kind of pivoting here a little bit, because there's so much to cover with you and with both of between the dental practice and your massage. But with the dental practice, you are now doing sleep dentistry as well, which is something I don't think I ever really thought of till I read it on your website and put two and two together of what that means and what it could be and how it could benefit people.
Yeah.
But I want to hear from you, what is that and what are you, I know you're doing a lot of neat stuff in this space, and we can kind of talk about, this massage office turning into more of sleep dentistry, but kind of take us through that, because I think that's probably something people are not familiar with.
Sure. So during COVID, when we were sitting at home, I started looking into some continuing education and started taking some classes dealing with sleep breathing issues, snoring, sleep apnea. And it sort of is a question like, why would a dentist talk to me about my snoring or about and it all
that was
really,
my first thought.
Yeah. It all really makes sense when you think about it. It's all like in your mouth and your throat. Like this is where it is. And so there's so many options for treating sleep breathing issues, apnea. There's surgical. Now they have this implant that you can put in that will sort of like a pacemaker. It'll kind of like pull your muscles taut so that you don't snore. It's called Inspire. They have, CPAP, of course, and all the different kind of PAP machines that you can get. And then now there's these appliances, mouth appliances, which bring your jaw forward, your lower jaw forward, so that it takes all that tissue, extra tissue, brings your tongue forward kind of thing, and it just opens up the airway, just make it more patent so air can just kind of more passively come through. It's different than a CPAP because a CPAP is going to
It's forcing air. Okay.
Yeah. It forces air in. And so if there's an obstruction, like your tongue is back or your throat's closed, it just blows it open and forces the air in. It's not so much that the air is going in, it's the blowing of the airway open. And then, of course, and then the air goes in. But the way that the appliance is it just sort of holds it open so that you just have a patent airway that's not blocked. So that's why dentistry kind of falls into that, because we deal with the mouth all the time. Yeah. And these appliances are tooth-borne. They're going to be retained by your teeth, by your gums and things. And who knows more about that than a dentist?
Exactly.
So that's how that all sort of came to be. And I started taking more and more classes on it. And I was just super fascinated. I actually started doing this several years ago, maybe like 8 years ago. I started taking some classes on sleep apnea and things like that and bought some equipment for it. But it's touchy because as a dentist, I cannot diagnose sleep apnea.
Okay.
It has to be diagnosed by a sleep physician, pulmonologist, ENT, something, a physician. And then they decide your mode of treatment. So if you're so severe that you need to be on a CPAP machine or have surgery or, something like that, they say, this is the mode we're going with. If they say, you're mild, the way that the architecture in your mouth is such that you would benefit from an appliance, then they send them back to me.
Okay.
And then I make that for them. But I have to abide by a prescription by a physician. So then I have a very good relationship with some of the area ENTs and pulmonologists who are so great. And we're trying to educate each other, because this is not super new, but it is on the rise, so much on the rise because either awareness and, I hate to say it, obeseness.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting to be a very fat population.
Yes.
And that, not that it's limited to people that are, overweight, but it is a huge factor. And in that sense, there's a lot of people that
are affected. And I know that people can take that and turn that into a very sensitive topic, but talk to us about why the being obese or being overweight is going to affect your airway.
Okay. So obesity, or not even obesity, you can be a big football player with a big, thick, muscular neck. Now you're talking about mass.
Yeah.
And so when you lay down, that mass of tissue and muscle and fat will press down on your airway.
Yeah.
I mean, they're straws, basically. Your trachea, esophagus, they're basically straws that are leading down into your body. But they're collapsible.
Yes.
And
okay.
It's going to collapse with excess tissue, whether it's muscle or fat. And so trying to figure out ways to reduce that, either with sort of like a liposuction of your airway, basically, paring down some of that excess tissue with surgery, or bringing the jaw forward to get it out of the way so it's not so collapsible, or with the, puff of air that you put through to kind of push that out of the way. That's the whole premise. It's just too much tissue, too much fat. That's just getting in the way.
I know it's really important to talk about because there's the obvious things that we think of when we think of obesity or being overweight, of becoming pre-diabetic and then diabetic, or the extra strain on the joints, or just mobility in general, and being able to live a full life if that's what you want. But I hadn't ever really thought about that connected with sleep apnea. I mean, it makes perfect sense, but it's not something that people are like, again, you mentioned education earlier. That's not something that people are being educated on.
I'm actually doing a talk later this month at like the senior center here at Generations, and also in the fall I'm starting with the community education and doing some talks with that, because it really is something that people they're getting aware of it. And what used to be cute snoring, cute gurgling and things like that, even with children, especially with children, it's not cute anymore, because it's actually literal cries for help. You need air. And during that time when you are supposed to be restoring and just rehabilitating yourself at night, it's not happening. And I'm not even just talking about breathing. I'm talking about cardiovascularly. When you have an obstruction that, your airway just shuts down, your body doesn't really know the difference between that obstruction and someone choking you. So in the middle of the night, your body thinks someone's choking me. What happens? Your sympathetic fires, your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, every cortisol levels go, crazy during this time when you're supposed to be resting. And how many times does it happen in the night? I know there's people out there that sleep right next to somebody that is, choking all through the night, and you sit there and you wait for them to breathe. You can't even sleep because you're like worried that they're not going to take that next breath. Yeah. There's so many people that are like that. And those are the people that need to get help. And sometimes they don't realize, the person themselves don't realize that this is super happening until their bed partner says, hey, you weren't breathing last night, or you were snoring so hard, or, that kind of thing. They have really great things now on apps on your phone.
Yeah, to track your sleep.
Track your sleep, but you can also track your snoring, and it will tell you. So if you don't have a bed partner, you have an app that can be your bed partner and tell you,
use
if you're breathing, not breathing, kind of thing. But a sleep study is just really what you need to have to just definitively say.
Because that's affecting everything, because a lack of oxygen then to your brain, to your cardiovascular system, you're putting stress on your heart.
Yeah. It affects so much. I mean, they've talked about, increase in incidence of cancer, diabetes, definitely high blood pressure, all of that, even overweight. Some people, they're like, oh, I'm overweight and, now I have sleep apnea. It could be the opposite. So you have sleep apnea and then you make poor choices with food. You know how it is. You're tired, you just grab. You don't want to cook. You just grab and you have poor diet. You're tired. You don't want to work out. So it's sort of chicken or the egg, I mean, you may be overweight because of your sleep apnea, and now you have sleep apnea because of your weight, so
I love that you brought that up, because that is part of it, right? Like there's no shame in either one of those things, because one could be causing the other, and there are solutions. And they might be difficult, especially if it is I need to lose weight to help with this other thing. But I love that you called that out, that if you're already having these sleep apnea issues, the other issues that you're trying to address to help that are going to be worse. So let's treat all of it.
Yeah.
More holistically, I think, approach of.
Right. I mean, I have patients that are on CPAP machines already, and the compliance on CPAP machines, they dwindle. especially, after 3 to 5 years, some people are just like, yeah, it helps me, but I just cannot do this anymore, and then they come and they say, can I have this appliance, and so then we work with their ENT or physician or whatever to see if they're, a good candidate for it. But yeah, it's hard because nothing works if you don't use it.
Yeah.
A CPAP, honestly, is awesome. It is the best. It's the gold standard for it. But it doesn't work when it's in your closet. The compliance on a appliance is so much higher. It's just tolerable that, these people, they get on CPAP machines because their bed partner is like, I cannot sleep with your snoring, or I cannot sleep because I'm afraid you're not breathing. And then they get this CPAP machine and I cannot sleep with you because you have this
noise. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, I want my bed partner back, and so they'll come and they'll say, can I get this?
Yeah.
My wife and I have been sleeping in separate rooms or whatever. And it's just, it's helpful and it's nice to have options.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually just made one for a lady that she was going to the desert for a couple weeks.
Uh-huh.
Of course, no electricity. And she was on a CPAP machine, but she said better than nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, Reggie White died from sleep apnea.
Right.
And you look at him and you're like, well,
he's an athlete.
He's an athlete. Yeah. But it's not, it's not limited to just, super obese men over 50 kind of thing. It's really, can be anybody, and it's life-saving. I can't tell you how many stories that I've heard about people, they die just because they just sleep apnea. And
Wow.
that that's what it is.
Yeah.
I'll just share, I don't know if I want to put this in there, but my assistant had, her uncle was diagnosed with sleep apnea. He had problems before and finally got diagnosed. He was waiting for his CPAP machine to arrive and he died. The next day, the CPAP machine showed up at the door. Like, it just is something that I think people blow off because they think snoring. Or it's just whatever. I just don't get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
Whatever. It's not whatever. It's way more than that. And again, it's education. I mean, it's letting people know, like, there is something wrong and there's a way to fix it, or at least, reduce, the effects of whatever it is that you're having. So I'm passionate about it. I really do want to, help whoever I can.
I definitely feel like I just learned so much in the last 10 minutes about it. Like, I've been aware of it. I know about it, but don't know that I would call it to someone's attention right away, especially if you have a partner where maybe your schedules are different and you're sleeping, maybe somebody's working at night and you maybe hear it in passing as they leave or something. Right. You might not think about how important it is to go, hey, what the heck? Why don't we just get it checked out? Like, it doesn't hurt to just go find out if this is something you have and find a solution. Right.
I think where it really hits home is when you see children that struggle to breathe. I just remember watching this video of a child in a car seat. So not even laying down. It's upright, and was in the car seat and sleeping and just, and just sounded like they were choking, and at first, you're like, oh, that's so cute, whatever, and then they just stop breathing. And then all of a sudden they take a big gasp and you're like, okay, then that cannot be good. Yeah. Then you have, even babies can have this, and then they have like failure to thrive and don't really know what's going on, but it is just really, they're just not getting their, REM sleep. They're not getting their deep sleep, and so then they're smaller, and then they have focus issues at school and, get diagnosed with ADHD or something like that when it's more of a sleep. It's very often, it could be just a sleep issue or a sleep breathing issue, but it gets diagnosed ADHD. And you're like, we can help you with that without medication. Kind of thing.
And that's something that there's, a lot of talk about, especially with the way the world is right now. And we're seeing a lot of young men specifically commit horrendous acts, and people are going, what's the bottom line, right? And there's so many layers. There's tons of different things, right? But you mentioned the REM sleep. You mentioned the going into school and being diagnosed with something like ADHD, and how missing REM sleep at any age, our brains aren't having that chance to reset. We're not we're not, processing like the memories of the day and then being able to, okay, next, and do that filing system the right way. And so mental health then becomes the conversation, like, is that the bottom line? Is that the root of the problem? So do we do more mental health services? Or, and maybe this is a stretch, are there these sleep problems that we're encountering for whatever problem, children being more obese or what we're feeding them or whatever, or just a natural sleep issue. And now that's affecting REM sleep. It's affecting, they're tired in school. The things just start piling up. So, and again, there's a bunch of different reasons. I'm sure it's not one thing, and I'm not saying that, but to hear you talk about it, it's like, oh, wow, that kind of puts a light bulb in my brain of there's so many things happening potentially at a young age that we're going, oh, that is cute.
Yeah.
But no, that's a sleep issue that could be causing additional health issues down the road.
Yeah. I mentioned the first class that I took like 8 years ago or so, the lady that was training us, she was telling us about her son who just really had a lot of student issues, just not performing well, not focusing well, misbehaving, falling asleep in class. And he had this habit of like twirling his hair and pulling on his hair and things like that. And to the point where like he had bald spots. And she finally had him tested for sleep, and ends up that he had sleep apnea, and he was already a teenager by this time.
Sure.
So had already sort of like damage was done. And he finally was able to sleep and kind of started turning his life around. I mean, things just were so much better for him. Right. And then they talked about the hair pulling thing, and they found out he did that to keep himself awake. So that, it's kind of these signs that we don't really realize, but in retrospect, we're like, oh yeah, that may be what the problem was,
Wow.
But you don't really know, and you hopefully experience will teach you. Yeah. So I took a board exam with the American Academy of Dental Sleep Medicine just recently, and hoping that I passed, and that I will be a diplomate with the Academy. And so there are none in this county right now. The nearest one I think is Manitowoc, and like an hour or so away. So there was one in Sheboygan here, but he retired. The timing seems to be right to kind of pick it up. But I'm hoping that this sort of opens the door to maybe more dentists doing it, and more physicians being aware of like this option, because it may not be the option that is presented to them when they are talking about sleep, breathing disorders. But knowing, like Philips just had a huge recall with all their CPAP machines that had a special lining in it that was breaking down. And so there were a bunch of CPAP machines that were recalled. So I have some patients that they said, I have no CPAP machine now. I can't get one either because their insurance, there's like a snafu with their insurance, or they just don't have them. They're just not available. So what they're telling physicians now is your severe ones, yes, get them their CPAP machines. Your mild to moderate, if they're a candidate for an appliance, do that. And save the severe ones, save the CPAPs for them. So I'm hoping that sort of, will raise the awareness and, maybe increase the numbers of people that will be using this type of appliance.
It's good to know that that's a conversation you can have with your doctor. Is there an alternative so that I don't just stop using this
Right.
because I'm annoyed with it. I'm
Right.
tired.
Right. And like I said, CPAP is so good. Something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
You know, if this is going to be, 80% as good, at least you're doing something,
Yes.
because otherwise, putting it in the closet, like I said, doesn't help.
So we're sitting right now in what is Jade Healing Massage, which is an endeavor that you started. And you told me when I came in that you'll be closing in November and turning this into your sleep dentistry office. But let's talk a little bit about the massage practice as well while you had it.
I just like the mouth, that was great helping, but doing the whole body just is a whole different thing. It was funny because when I first started, we were in this building next door here, and I stole the consultation room that was to the left. So when you came in to the treatment area, to the left was the consultation, and to the right were all the operatories.
Okay.
And it was funny because patients would be like, I want to go to the left. I don't want to go to the right.
Yeah. I'll just be over here and massage.
So, but it was always my thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to use it. I'm not going to just do it and, whatever.
Yeah.
Just put it to the side. So, it was a little weird, to kind of, because people are like, you have a profession, you have a practice. Like, why would you do this? And again, going back to that story, universe was just pushing me to do this. Don't really know why, but I just listened and did it. And really, it's been such a joy. The people that I've met and the stories and, how I've helped them. You had mentioned something about the ear seeds.
Yeah.
I have a lot of stories about, auricular therapy, and I don't use it a ton, but there are instances where I'm like, this seems like an application for this. I just love learning. I just am like a perpetual student. As soon as I got done taking my board for my sleep thing, I started looking at some myofunctional therapies for mouth and throat, and basically kind of how to work out your muscles to kind of keep them toned so that you don't get this. And my husband's like, really?
What
I'm like,
next?
I could take this class, and then if I take this test, then I'll be certified in this. And he was like, oh, you literally just got done taking this board.
That's great though. I mean, I love that because I think I'm a lifelong learner too, because I like to know the root of the problem. Like where was the seed of the problem planted?
Yeah.
And start there, because with the overload of information in our society and culture, we just go to like the symptom that's presenting right now. And I had that experience with thinking that I tore something in my shoulder and having this pain, and finally went online and just YouTube some physical therapy tests to see if it was, did I tear something, or went to my massage therapist who did work down all into my pecs and into the muscles in my armpit, and instant relief. But I was so tense and stressed, and I had just neglected just my pec muscles, my shoulders, everything was so tight that whatever nerves it was hitting or whatever was giving me the sensation of I might need shoulder surgery because of the pain I'm experiencing. Yeah. And after several visits, and then me doing exercises on my own, and then strengthening again, and then dealing with my stress, I don't have that pain anymore.
Yeah.
But so I like to get to that root of the problem of the root of my problem is actually I'm typing on my computer wrong and I'm stressed. And so you combine those, a physical motion within my body holding on to that stress or trauma, and now it's creating a muscular problem. Yeah. And now I found a solution. But if you don't know how to get to the root of that problem, I mean, again, there's a lot of layers to it, but and that's the benefit of massage is you're addressing physical, but then your patient almost needs to potentially find out what those stressors are.
Right.
Or
Exactly. Well, yeah. What's the root of the problem?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Is it holding your phone with your neck? Or I have one patient that she was a checkout person,
Yeah.
one of the grocery stores. And she always had this pain like on her right side. And it was because that's what the hand she used to drag the item over the scanner. And she was constantly doing that over and over again. And she started getting a lot of pain. And we're like, well, that's your problem, like you need to figure out a way, either not do that job, do a different job, or figure out a way, use your other hand sometimes, or, something.
How do you manage because are you just naturally someone that can handle that stress? Because I mean, even if it's not stressful, right? Like to me, learning's not stressful, it's enjoyable, but I need lots of downtime because interacting with people is such a an energy suck for me.
Yeah.
I think because I take in, I'm really trying to listen, and their energies can really feed into mine, good, bad, or otherwise.
Yeah.
So I need 8 hours of sleep. I need, breaks in between to just kind of reset. Okay, now I'm entering into a conversation that's going to be about something else. Let me kind of clear my head from that last one.
Right.
But with someone like you or your daughter that you mentioned, you have to maximize your time.
Yeah.
And you're doing stuff back to back. How do you not push too far or become too stressed? Or have you encountered that?
I do get stressed out. And my family will be the first to tell you that I am a little crazy sometimes. I'll be yelling or whatever, just like a mom, if I kids would. But yeah, I do. I would say that probably the biggest thing is my husband is super fan, super supporter. When I was running marathons, he was dragging 5 kids along with him, while, I'm running all these marathons, and, I go to these continuing education things and, leave, and he's got to, hold down the fort while I'm gone. And, he's awesome, and he pursues his own things, but very quietly, and just kind of does his own thing and does it, without disrupting like I do, disrupting the flow. But he's very low key. He's the kindest person you will ever meet. And he's just so supportive. And like I said, how he was like, oh, really? You just got done with this board? Honestly, he was just kind of like, it tracks.
All right.
Yeah. Of course you are, because now you're bored. And I laugh because my dad is sort of the same, runs his life sort of in the same vein. He said to us that the reason why he became a physician and a surgeon is because he just really didn't sleep. And he said, I really needed to do something and study something that would require me to put the time in, because everybody else is sleeping and I'm twiddling my thumbs because I need something, so he started doing that. And he was always trying new things. Even when I was a kid, he'd try cross country skiing or this acupuncture thing, or, he does woodworking now. As soon as he retired when he was 70, he built a house, literally with his 2 hands, with a friend, built a house. Wow. And, so I come by it, honestly.
Yeah. It's genetic.
Yes. But I think it's good because, it's really rubbed off on my kids in a good way. I'm very involved in music, and I love that all my kids love music. They love singing. During COVID, we put together, I always wanted to have a family band. Even when my youngest was all she could play was triangle,
Yeah.
And, my husband played the bass, I'd play the keyboard or something, or my flute, and, all the kids played something, and never could get it together. Either we all would just start and be stir crazy and just get frustrated and not do it or whatever. But during COVID, we were all in the house. And now they were old enough that Tim and I didn't need to be in the band anymore.
Yeah.
The 5 of them could hold it down. So I had my youngest playing the piano, my other daughter playing the bass, my oldest playing the guitar, my second son playing the cajon, which is like the percussion.
Okay.
And then my third son playing violin.
Oh, wow.
And they did I Can Only Imagine, which is just such a lovely song.
Yeah.
and each of them sang a verse, and they did it completely. It was so funny because I wanted to do this, but recording stuff, you just can't really do it on your phone or whatever. So I contacted the local music store and asked her, do you have like anything that I could use to like record? And she had like a soundboard.
Nice.
We could put all our mics in, and then we had a couple amps for our guitars and stuff. We actually have like this sound system now. And so we recorded it, and it actually was just kind of a rough rehearsal recording.
Yeah.
But it ended up being the final cut because my son ended up having to leave to go to Madison. So that's the final cut. And I love it still. It's awesome, but it's just like in our living room.
I love
the kids
that.
Singing it, and it's my favorite thing. And it was like a total dream come true for me because it was the one thing that I really wanted since they were little. Because, after paying for so many lessons, and it finally came to fruition.
Yeah. It took a global pandemic, but we have a family band, and
they're kind of a one hit wonder kind of thing.
Yeah,
They only do one song. It's the only song they did, but it was really nice because while they were working on it together, I kind of got the ball rolling, but they were old enough and good enough musicians that they could kind of figure it out themselves. And, Tim and I would be in the kitchen listening to them, and they were just having a ball, laughing and loving it. And we recorded some of their, rehearsals and things like that. And it was just so awesome.
I love that.
Yeah. Your kids will do what you love to do too. Like they see you have a passion for something, and they're like, I want to try that. So like two of my sons have already done marathons. One's done, I think, 3 of them already. And, because they've seen me do them. And honestly, I think they think if mom can do them, honestly, I should be able to do it, right? So, they start running, and then, they sing, and they, play piano, they play guitar, whatever. But I think a lot of it comes from, hey, I have a little introduction to this.
Yeah.
I kind of know a little bit about it. It's not something so foreign. And then they see, and then they kind of run with it. It's funny because my youngest, a few years ago, I mean, she was probably only like 12 or something. And I said, hey, do you think you'd ever run a marathon? And she was like, yeah, I think maybe I would. And I was thinking, not all 12-year-olds would say that unless they kind of know what it means or what it
entails.
And, and I kind of thought I gotta pat myself on the back for that one because it just giving them these little introductions. I think that just is huge. So
well, it opens them up to so many different experiences that maybe even if it's not something you do forever as a parent, if you go pottery and you're excited about it, maybe one of your kids, that is what their art form, and it becomes their passion, which they would have never found if one of their parents hadn't been like, what the heck, let's learn it. Same thing with traveling with kids, or no matter how old they are, like seeing the world and opening their eyes to other opportunities and other cultures and just what's out there. Sometimes we just we have so many blinders on. And I think the world kind of teaches us, like, pick your thing, do it, make money to support being alive and the newest gadget and whatever. And we don't think about, like, it's possible to support yourself and pursue anything that you are passionate about or interested in.
I totally agree. And being in mom groups, we'll be talking, and some moms will be like, I only let them be in 2 sports, and that's it. They pick 2, and those are the 2 that they're going to be in, and that's it. And I'm like, because I'm not going to run around driving them everywhere and whatever. And here, I have 5 kids, and I'm like, you be in as many things as you want. You want to do it, I will drive you there. I will, you just have to commit to it. Like, I don't want to, none of this quitting stuff. You ride it out, even if you don't like it. You're
doing, you signed up.
And these other moms like, I would never, that's not what and I'm like, no, I'm the total opposite.
Yeah.
Because you never know if that one thing that they try is going to
Lights
be
that spark.
the thing, that they love. And so I always told my kids, you do whatever you want to do, and I will be there to cheer you on and drive you wherever. And they know it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cute because now that they're old enough to realize that, and they see us going to all, my daughter's stuff, and, the older boys are like, you know what? You were at all my soccer games. Like, you were at all, like they were like, you never miss. Like, my husband and I would go to great lengths to just even see like the last 20 minutes of a game or something, if that's all we could see, and we're like, well, it's joyful for us to see you doing something that you love. And B, if you're going to be there, I should be there too. It only happens for so long.
And it's something they committed to, they perfected, they dedicated time to. Like, how impactful is it to have somebody show up and go, wow, like we get invited to a 4-year-old nephew's little Wednesday soccer shots or whatever. And I'm like, I want to go to that because how cool is a kid to turn around and see people that love you cheering you on and it does teach dedication. Like, you committed to coming out and getting on this field, even though, they're not really playing soccer, but you came out here and you committed to it. Right. And it's a joy for me to see you having fun. And then for them to turn around and just see, like, these are the people that have my back, and it's so impactful as a parent for kids. And it's, I'm sure they're not consciously thinking that, but it gets implanted, back to that idea of seeds. I think that's kind of been a common theme through this conversation, but implants that seed of, here's someone I can trust. They really love me. They showed up even just for 10 minutes. Like, it's a beautiful way to end this conversation, but it's just a beautiful concept to share and think about, like just how the littlest thing makes a difference.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time out to talk with me and be a part of this new podcast.
This is so fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Don't forget to follow Conversation Mill on Instagram for episode previews, and join Conversation Mill at conversationmill.substack.com for additional chats with our guests, entrepreneurship tips, leadership training, and member-only content. And as always, thank you for listening to Conversation Mill and being part of our community.